Okay, welcome everyone. This is a Local 100 Fightback Coalition Facebook live stream. We're coming to you tonight to try to update some of the things that are going on in the union and RTO in particular. You all may have heard that the union went to court this week on Friday at 4 p.m. at the very last minute to file a lawsuit against the MTA that should have been filed at least 8, 10 months ago. Uh, the the union leadership has been quoted in the newspaper like 2 months ago, saying that they knew that the service cuts were illegal, that it violated the basic right of the riding public and of those taxpayers who pay for New York City transit, mostly poor working class communities that pay the overwhelming freight for the running of the transit system, that those community members had a basic fundamental right that was protected by both New York state law and federal law, that there must be public hearings anytime the MTA even considers any kind of service cut, any kind of layoffs, any significant changes to the service that's provided to the riding public. They knew that they had to have public hearings. So the question is, why does it happen that the union lawsuit comes on Friday at 4 p.m., less than 48 hours before yet another round of service cuts are about to be implemented on the F line? And the thing is that it wasn't like they weren't told. Um, they knew about this going back to shortly after the pandemic, when service was restored on every line except full service was restored on every line except for the C and the F lines. So at that point, they knew that the MTA was no longer in this emergency mode because they had restored service on all of those lines. So where was the fight for all of these months? So I think we all know the answers to that. I mean, we know the answers to that being that this is the same union leadership that allowed over 150 of our coworkers to die and tens of thousands to become infected unnecessarily because they wouldn't fight the boss over basic public safety measures that could have protected many transit workers and prevented them from dying unnecessarily at the hands of our murderous bosses. So, you know, that this has been an ongoing struggle between rank and file members and the union leadership. And the union leadership has chosen the path of negotiating with those who kill us. And I'm all for negotiating. Any union member wants to engage in vigorous negotiation with management, but you want to do so from a position of strength, not a position of weakness. And when somebody is pissing in your face and telling you it's raining, when somebody's using our members' face as a doormat, when somebody is reassigning people all over the system in the middle of a pandemic, when your opponent says that your cab door is a non-permeable barrier and will protect you from COVID-19, what the fuck? What have we been doing? And why has there been no action? And a lot of it has to do with the strategy and tactics of the union in general. And then the other question is, why now? Well, why now? Because they're in huge trouble because they lost again at arbitration, which is what Eric Logel does when he goes to arbitration. He loses. And continuing to go through the standard procedures, to go through the motions of arbitration, to go through the motions of negotiating with people who are negotiating in bad faith with you, just shows weakness again and again and again. So it's no wonder that Sarah Feinberg on her live stream, her supposed town hall with our members, basically says, yeah, we broke the law, and basically says, what are you going to do about it? No, these are not significant changes. Sorry, we're not breaking the law. These are not significant changes. She just makes this shit up. She just says whatever she wants to, whatever she thinks, whatever's clever for them to continue to get away with breaking the law because they don't fear the union. And they didn't even fear that they would even do this much. So the question is, why did they do this much? Because they were dragged kicking and screaming into doing this, because they were embarrassed and exposed for their lack of action. Because everywhere they went, the conductors meeting, the executive board meeting, in the crew rooms, anywhere they had to account for what the strategy is, they didn't have any answers. And it was because rank and file members were organizing to file their own lawsuit, which would have been an embarrassment to the leadership of Local 100, to be publicly exposed, to have their members have to seek outside legal counsel with their own money to sue the MTA because they wouldn't. That's why they did what they did. And I'm just going to share with you my screen to show you, because unlike Eric Logel and Tony Utano, I always have receipts for everything I do. So, and I do everything in full view of the membership of Local 100. And that's the least we can expect from any kind of union leadership that says that they are interested in leading the kinds of fights that we need. Just trying to get to the page that I was looking for here. Sorry about that. There we go. Just got to find the post. My internet is messing with me here. So here's the letter that was sent to Pat Foy and Sarah Feinberg on March 17th. It was sent by lawyers that I solicited to take up the cause of fighting against these illegal service cuts. And you'll notice that the letter that was written by these lawyers talks about platform controllers, which the union's lawsuit does not. The union said they didn't think there was a case because they had agreed to these jobs being temporary. Now that has nothing to do with whether or not what the MTA is doing is illegal. It's the same law, and it's the same principle that the riding public was denied a service. Their service was unilaterally cut by the MTA's own decision making without any check from the riding public, without any notification of the mayor, any notification of the city council members at all, which is entirely illegal. Also quoted in this legal letter was the case that the union won in the station agent lunch relief case. The station agent lunch relief case was the MTA wanted to unilaterally eliminate lunch relief jobs for station agents. And the union went to court. It was filed by a public official, elected official, Espaillat versus Foy. And guess who the judge was in that case? Mr. Perry, Frank Perry, who is the current judge in the same case that the union is now putting before the Supreme Court. So you'll have to guess for yourself, I guess, why the union leadership did not quote the Espaillat case in their lawsuit. Why did the union leadership not want to provide you a copy of that lawsuit? Why is it left to me as a elected executive board member who works the road just like you, who receives no release time, to put out the full text of the lawsuit? Why did they not want to share that with you? And part of the reason why they didn't want to share that with you is because their lawsuit does not do what it needed to do. And they were lucky to get the ruling that they got on Friday. And the reason they got that ruling was because what the MTA has done is so egregious and so illegal, and there's such a long precedent for it, and there's so much harm that could be done if the work program was implemented on Sunday, that he had no choice but to give a temporary stay to implementing any changes on the F line. And I think it's very likely that he's going to rule in the union's favor on Tuesday and give them a temporary restraining order against the implementation of these service cuts, both on the F line and on the C line. But the other question is, when we are fighting for public services, this is about more than just us. And that's what unionism is about. That's what real unionism is about. Social justice unionism. It unites everyone affected in a common cause to fight in a united front for the things that we all need. And part of the reason why that's so powerful is that it connects the experiences of working class people in various different workplaces and begins to show them how they're all connected, how they're facing the same attack, how they have the same enemy, and it shows them their power when they unite. Well, I just want you guys to take a look at this picture and tell me if you think this is representative of the New York City and New York State working class and the people that we have to unite with in common cause over service cuts and job cuts. Take a look at this picture. The only people who are allowed to speak for the union, three white men. I'm a white man too. So is Jonathan. So is Tom. But we're anti-racists. And this is not a good look at all. For a 77% Black, Latino, and immigrant union, for this to be their representation and the manifestation of the fight that's going to happen to stop the attacks on immigrant communities of color who have been devastated by the MTA's service cuts and devastated by their callous disregard for their lives, for their ability to get to work, all these kind of things. And this is the image that your union leadership thinks is showing common cause with them, is solidarity with them. And that's a huge problem. This is not a cheap shot. It's just the reality. Unless you are completely and utterly clueless to the world we live in, this does not represent Local 100. This does not represent transit riders. And this is about their ego. And that's all it's about. And that's the problem, is that they're in their feelings, in their ego, and they're upset about being criticized for not doing their goddamn job. They are failing at their most basic responsibility. They have failed at their most basic responsibility for over a year now, and our members are dead because of it. And this is doing us no benefit. This is not helping us. And this is why members have chosen to take their own action. And we will continue to do so. And the fact that they've abandoned platform controllers, because clearly they think there aren't that many of you and they're not going to lose that many votes. And because it would only confirm the fact that what the hell have they been doing since June? Since June, the platform controllers have been reassigned all over the place. That is a real service cut to people who are just coming back to the subway, who want to know that there's a live person there, that want to know that there's somebody they can go to if they need police assistance, medical. You say riders are not coming back to the subway in the way that we want them to or that we expected. Well, part of that is if they feel alone and isolated and vulnerable, they're not going to come back. And the cut of platform controller jobs is not just about the platform controllers, it's about the whole system not caring about the people who are forced to ride the subway, essential workers, the people who kept this world running in the middle of the worst pandemic that was country's ever seen. In the middle of a depression, they still came to work, and we still came to work. And nobody gave a shit whether they got mugged, pushed in front of a train, whether they got to work safely, whether they lost their jobs because they weren't able to get to work safely. None of that was considered. And we don't expect anything else from the bosses of Local 100 because it's like expecting a pig not to oink. It's like expecting a dog not to bark. But Local 100 is a different story. Local 100 is a union and a union of the people who have been most affected by this crisis. And it simply has not spoken in the interest of those workers. And it's failed in doing that. So if they won't fight for platform controllers, I will put up my own money and I will sue the MTA over the job cuts. And we will petition to be part of any kind of legal finding in this case. So if you're a platform controller, get in touch with me. You have my number. I'll give it to you at the end of the live stream. But we're not giving up on the fight for justice for platform controllers. And no Local 100 members should, and no member of working class and poor in this city should accept that it's okay for them to be abandoned, because it's not. I just want to give Tom and Jonathan a chance to speak. We're going to have Humberto Rodriguez joining us later. Tom, would you like to go first?
Yeah. Well, it's already, I think it was pointed out in the posting that it was really odd that they chose West 4th Street and not 179th or 168 on this Charlie, or they could have went to Stillwell, anywhere, but I think it just seems like it was a more convenient location for them. But why they didn't reach out and try to get a better, a more representative representation of the union, and had someone other than white males at that press conference, and why they didn't reach out to at least one of the writer groups and bring in a few people of color who are writers and say, well, tell us a little bit about what your commute has been like with these reductions in service on the Charlie or the Fox, on the C or the F line. And I think that would have shown, kind of been a 1-2 punch if they could have gotten people talking about how it impacted their lives, having their job cut, and now they're subject to the whims of the being reassigned by the crew office, and also writers, and how their commute in an already probably ridiculously long day, making less than minimum wage, how that's impacted their life as well. Um, I'm kind of I think a lot of people are probably wondering why they didn't act on this right after the arbitrator ruled that it was okay to make these cuts, on implement that change in service. That should have been the very next thing. They should have had it written up and ready to immediately submit it in the event that the arbitrator ruled the way that he did. And it took them, I think it was 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken, that they sat on it. And then suddenly at the 11th hour, they pull it out of a magic hat, and they're after, I mean, after there was already one submitted by yourself. Um, yeah, it's just a really good example of the hypocrisy of the on the one hand, they spent money and time filming different transit workers to make a little sort of video that they can play on those electronic stands on the platforms, telling, saluting us heroes, transporting heroes, or whatever that ad campaign was, and photos of train operators and conductors in their operating cabs. And but they never made any move on okaying hazard duty pay. And then, as a to add salt in the wound, now they're cutting jobs, cutting platform controllers and jobs on lines. And I think anybody that doesn't understand that this is just the beginning, a trial balloon for other cuts on other lines system wide, is living in sort of a bubble.
Yeah, actually, they've been pretty clear about it, that this F line pick was kind of like shock therapy, that this was the tip of the spear, and that it was a way to set us up for even greater job cuts in the next pick. And they've already leaked out their plans about attacking people on the L line, attacking people on the J line, um, and who knows how many other lines that they have plans to do this on. And this is not about ridership being down. In fact, ridership is up, and they know it. And every day has been a new record in the last week for ridership. We're up to 1.9 million riders. Plus, they know there's 500,000 more riders potentially coming back to the subway when the schools reopen on Monday. But yet, these heartless bastards decided they were going to do a cut the day before schools opened. But they care about, the school students getting to work and not getting to school and not catching COVID. They care about the teachers getting to work. When they sell this bullshit narrative that the reason why the schools haven't been opened is because the teachers were refusing to work. They were refusing to die. That's what they were doing. They were fighting against unsafe conditions. And what has our union said to back those teachers up? Not a fucking word. Not a word. Not a word. Just like they didn't know what side of the barricades or the picket lines to be on in the Hunts Point strike. They were nowhere to be found. They've had nothing to say about a movement in this city to tax the rich. Can somebody please explain to me why a union who has had its members die by the hundreds, get infected by the tens of thousands, and had these scumbag bosses walk over our bodies, and after they called us heroes moving heroes, then they just kept it moving, didn't they? and they don't want to give us hazard pay. They don't want to give us nothing. Then they want to take our wage increase away from us, and they still don't get it. They still don't sense the danger. They still are lulled to sleep that because they have an agreement that the bosses won't break it. They break every agreement we've ever had with them. How clueless could you possibly be? There's protests right now over the state budget, calling to tax the rich, calling for an investment in the real New York, the New York that keeps New York moving, the working class, the poor, and to undo the damage that's already been done to homeless communities, to immigrant communities, to essential workers, to people who've been excluded from working because of the economy and the COVID. And our union hasn't said a damn thing about it. And they get upset when you criticize them about this. They get all in their feelings and all clutching their pearls about how dare you criticize us. If you are failing at making common cause with the working class, then who do you have common cause with? Who are you really working for? Who do you really represent? And we can see that with the corruption that we face on an everyday basis in this union. You can't even have a motion at the executive board even be discussed about common cause with other workers, fighting for COVID paid sick leave. The union let these MTA bosses, let them violate the law for like 8 months, denying our members New York State COVID paid sick leave. You know what? The MTA doesn't have the right to opt out of that program, and they never did. It's completely illegal. It would have to be written into the law, and it's not. But they let them get away with it because there was federal aid. Who are they doing a favor for by doing that? The governor, the rapist governor, okay? The sexist asshole governor, the governor who's closed hospitals throughout the city in the middle of a pandemic. He cut Medicaid. If it was any Republican cutting Medicaid in New York, do you really believe that the Democratic Party would have went to sleep on command? All the labor unions would have went to sleep on command? And it matters that we're silent. It matters because we see that picture. That picture is the end result. 3 white guys talking about why service cuts are bad, and they can't believe that we would criticize them on that. That white people wouldn't be okay with that. That anti-racists wouldn't be okay with that. They just can't believe it. They're shocked and appalled that you might criticize them about this. And you wonder why we're losing. Jonathan, would you like to get in here? And Jonathan's actually in transit and trying to get back to work at some point shortly. Jonathan, you there?
Yeah, I think you've put that all quite well. We criticize the union officers because we support the union. The union is us. The union is all of us. The union is the members. And I think that, and then the more we repeat that, the more we say that, I think we build a pathway to a stronger union because for decades there's been this culture that was actually created by the right to divide us, to make people think that the union is the union representatives. They're the union, and we pay them union dues. We pay them to do our work, to represent us, and then we just pay the dues. No, we need to get involved in the union. We need to hold union officers, the union officers that we elect to office. We need to hold them accountable. And other than that, I had to finish up my lunch and go back to work.
Yeah, no, I understand. Jonathan is joining us on a short break, and he's got to get back to work as tower operator. But thank you so much for joining us, Jonathan.
Thanks, John.
My pleasure.
Also, I just want to talk about the things that we should be fighting for, right? I don't know if you guys seen, but it's been all over the media that they did a study recently of in NYU of air quality in the New York City subway system. And I'm sure that nobody who really works down here or has ever worked down here or is a family member of someone who works down here would be surprised by But scientists did a study of the subway system, and I'm going to share my screen to show you what I'm talking about. Let's close this. All right. And there's actually an article in the Guardian, which I'll put in the comments. And what it says is that people traveling on subway systems in major U.S. cities are being exposed to unsafe amounts of air pollution, with commuters in New York, New Jersey subject to the highest levels of pollution, researchers found. Tiny airborne particles, probably thrown up by train brakes or the friction between train wheels and rails, are rife in the 71 underground stations sampled by researchers during morning and evening rush hours in both Boston, New York City, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. The levels of these tiny specks of pollution called PM 2.5 were well above the nationally determined safe daily levels of 35 micrograms per cubic meter in each of the cities. The Metropolitan Transit System in New York had 251 micrograms per cubic meter. So that's basically 77 times what what they should have. And they compared Christopher Street, a Manhattan station that helps connect New York and New Jersey. It had an incredible particulate pollution level of 1,499 micrograms per cubic meter. They said it was the worst pollution ever measured in a subway station, higher than some of the worst days in Beijing or Delhi. So the reason why I bring this up is that the date on this this article here is, let's see, I'm trying to find the date on it. It was in the last month, and the study by NYU was also within the last month, and basically the question is, okay, here it is, February 10th. Was the article in the Guardian, but it was all over international news media. Of course, the American news media falls to sleep and rolls over on command and sits up and barks for their corporate paymasters. But other than that, the real journalists in the world covered this, and the union knew about it. But where's the lawsuit over that? Where is the criminal investigation over that? Forget about a civil lawsuit. Where is the federal criminal charges against the MTA for what they've been documented by outside medical researchers and scientists who have absolutely no interest in fudging those numbers? And where is the union to demand that Columbia Presbyterian or whoever they wanted to choose, Columbia University, whoever they wanted to choose, John Hopkins, as a medical and scientific research experts, to have them come in and do their own independent monitoring of the subway system to document that NYU is right on this research. And if we're honest with ourselves, we all know they're right. We all know they're right because you know of coworkers who died 2 or 3 years after they retired down here. The average life of a bus operator when they retire from New York City Transit is 3 years. It could be as low as 2 years. I haven't seen any recent studies about subway workers, but I would assume that it probably is worse. So where is your union? They are complete. If we perform like this in the subways, they consider us AWOL. They consider us abandoning our jobs. If you were a lawyer or a doctor, they consider it malpractice, wouldn't they? So the question is, like, what does the membership need to do to get this union leadership to understand the consequences that we face? And you've seen in the F and C line cases where this is a slam dunk case, and they knew it was a slam dunk case because they already won in court before the same judge. They get in front of the same judge. They don't even mention the fact that, Your Honor, the MTA doesn't even care about your orders. You ordered them not to violate the same law, the public access law. And they went ahead and did it multiple times. And they don't even bring it up. Why not? Why would the union not have an interest in making that argument? Your Honor, they don't care about you. You told them to follow the law, and they said, oh, who cares what he says? We're going to do what we want. And there's no response. So the silence is deafening. That's why that's why the MTA feels they have a license to kill us. And a union leadership that allows that, even if they don't want that. I mean, I'll stipulate that the union leadership doesn't want our members dead. It's not in their interest, right? It's not good for public relations. But what are you going to do to stop us from dying? What are you going to do to stop the people who murder us from murdering us? And there's just simply nothing going on here. There is no action. And it has a lot to do with the corruption that we see within the union. It has a lot to do with you not getting your ballot on time or getting sent to the wrong address, or the runaround that people get to even run for office in this union. Apparently, Arthur Schwartz was busy doing something else. Don't know what it was. Maybe he was running for office or something like that. But Tony Utano was busy meeting with white supremacist, fascist scum and union busters. That's what he was busy with last week, the last week that we did a live stream about, and you all saw the video of. But and also Arthur Schwartz is very busy keeping members from running for office. That's one of his big things. Like, he spent like a whole week trying to keep me from running for executive board, to try to say I was a dues cheat. That he has time for. But our members dying, no time for that. So our response to the union leadership is, we got no time for your bullshit. Our members are dying, and if you won't do something about it, then we will. And we now have political connections. We now have legal connections. And if you want to be dragged into court over that, you can whistle past the graveyard. You go right ahead. But I would suggest that you get fucking busy and start filing some lawsuits and start taking some political action. You guys are such friends with Senator Schumer, right? Best buddies on your live stream. You kiss his ass all the time. When is Schumer going to do something for us? Schumer don't care about transit workers dying in the subway. He don't care about air quality for the riding public. Doesn't give a shit. Is that what you're really telling me? When has the demand been made? Frederick Douglass was right. Power concedes nothing without a demand. Never has and never will. Without struggle, there is no progress. And if they won't lead it, then we will drag them into the fight that needs to be led. And we need members to step up. We need to know about your health conditions. We need to know about family members that died, because I fully intend to get justice for those members. And I think it should be our mission in life to honor the dead and fight like hell for the living. Because if we don't, there's no future for us. And anybody who thinks there is, you're kidding yourself. That's not living. That's dying. Tom, you want to get in here, or Jonathan? Jonathan, I know you got to go back to work, so I wanted to give you an opportunity if you have something to say. Can you hear us? I think is he trying to unmute? Oh, there you go.
I hear you. I don't think I could have put it better than that. It actually is a slogan that actually used to be on the Local 100 newsletter, the quote from Frederick Douglass.
Yep.
And they took it off the Local 100 bulletin when John Samuelson took over. It was on the top of every single newsletter. Power concedes nothing without a struggle. It never has and never will. It was on every newsletter, and they took it off.
Yeah, it must have been in preparation for what they were going to do, right? To tier 6.
maybe.
Yeah.
Tells you something.
Yeah, I know you got to go soon. I just wanted to give you a last chance if you wanted to speak. So.
That's okay. That's about. Just wanted to point that out.
Yeah. All right, Jonathan. We'll see you soon. But
All right.
yeah, Tom. Did you want to speak here?
Yeah. I just recently read an article. It was in a magazine, Jacobin, about a prediction that if the Australian organized labor movement doesn't do something to reach out to try to organize or do something to help the unemployed working class members, that it's going to spell a death blow to organized labor in Australia. And we've been saying this for the same thing forever, that the American labor movement is completely failing the unemployed members of the working class and not doing anything to reach out to them. Everything from these contract workers that were hired during the pandemic to sanitize and clean the subway cars. I still see them sitting out there on a turned up 5-gallon bucket, eating their lunch, right as people are walking by them, homeless people walking by without a mask on. And that's no way for a worker to be treated. That's no way for a human being to be treated. They deserve a table in a room where they can wash their hands and eat in privacy and relax and unwind for a few minutes before they go back to work. And our union, I guess, feels that they have no obligation, or I just don't understand the opportunities to really prove like a real, take charge kind of leadership would have immediately been on trying to find a way to have televised union meetings this whole time that we couldn't meet in person, and not a single, I don't think there's been any attempt to do that by any of them. And the failure to try to reach out to the contract workers, the unemployed, they've been silent on Cuomo's attempt to move 145 million out of the budget into some other pet project, while all the time crying crocodile tears about poverty. The fact of still standing by him under that he helped provide cover for nursing homes to hide how many deaths were actually occurring there, and they're putting profits ahead of human lives, and the sexual assault, sexual abuse allegations. And I mean, the list just keeps growing and growing, and they are just failing up and down the line. And it's, yeah, if they're not willing to do it, then we're going to have to push them, drag them, kicking and screaming, as you said.
Yeah. As far as the online meetings, being on the executive board, I can tell you that every time a motion for online meetings gets brought up, it gets ruled out of order by their lawyers. The person who runs the executive board in reality is Engel, their lawyer. He will not allow any discussion and advises them that they would be violating their own bylaws to even discuss it. And that's a problem, is that we got bylaws that are from the Stone Age. Okay. The same bylaws that say you have to have a paper ballot. There are unions all over this country that vote online, that have meetings online. But Local 100 is using the crutch of the bylaws that they wrote in about the 1960s or the 30s or whenever they were written. There's a reason why they clutch and cling to living like they're the Flintstones, in a dinosaur era, because they're terrified that if you pull that one piece out of this house of cards, it'll all fall apart, and they know it, and the party will be over for them, and they know that. They know if this new generation of workers who's been fucked over with tier 6 and with, wages that are poverty wages and pensions that are poverty pensions, and more give backs on healthcare and the conditions that they face as new employees, as opposed to those who have a little seniority to protect themselves, that the payback is going to be fierce, and it's going to be, they're sitting on top of a volcano and they know it. And that's why they won't even discuss it. So, I mean, to be honest with you, we need a new leadership. We're going to have to win a rigged election. We're going to have to win an unfair fight. And we're going to have to win it so massively that we overcome the institutional corruption that we're facing here.
Right.
We can't have any illusions. We can't kid ourselves. This is not a fair fight. It's rigged, but we got to win it. Massive numbers. It's kind of like Trump. It's not to equate the union leadership to Trump, but to overcome the first white supremacist president in recent memory. It took 74 million people voting, more people voting than ever in the history of this country, to overcome the institutional voter fraud, the institutional voter suppression, the terrorism that in a real way, turned down voting volume over many years, and has been, and you've seen after the election what they're doing. Well, I don't want to equate the union leadership to Trump, but they think like Trump when it comes to voter suppression. They really do. I mean, They think that it's perfectly acceptable for a president of Local 100 to be validated in the support of 28% of the union. They really think that represents that these are the only people who wanted to vote. Isn't that what Republicans say? Isn't that what Republicans say when the vote turnout is low? Oh well, those who wanted to vote, they got up and they went to the polls, and they of course ignore all the obstacles to voting, and all the intentional racist suppression of those they don't want to vote from being able to vote. So as far as the online meetings, I think we got to be honest with ourselves that we're going to have to win a rigged fight, and we're going to have to win it so massively. And we need people. Change your address with New York City Transit with TW Local 100. Sorry, change your address. Make sure that it gets changed. I have the form. I'll post it in the comments. Everyone, that should be your number one goal in life right now, is to make sure that your address is updated with Local 100. Make sure you email it to them. Make sure you have it sent by registered mail, and you have receipts that your address was changed. Take a picture of it. Keep the email. Save the email. We're not playing any games this time around. Okay, as far as Cuomo and the nursing home stuff, I mean, the silence has been absolutely epically deafening from Local 100. Not a word. What, Local 100 doesn't care about sexual harassment anymore, huh? Local 100 doesn't care about employers using their position as employers to extract sexual favors from their employees. They don't care about that, huh? Local 100 is on record by their silence in not caring that Governor Cuomo killed grandpa and grandma, right? Don't care that he put people who he knew had COVID-19 and were positive into the nursing homes where people had pre-existing conditions and were vulnerable. And he just sat back and said, no, what could happen? What could happen? That's depraved indifference for human life. That's murder. That's straight up murder. And Local 100 has had absolutely nothing to say about it. They also had nothing to say about the contract cleaners that Tom was talking about. Now, mostly immigrant workers, mostly women, and they're being exploited. They have complained about sexual harassment on the job. They've complained that they're being extorted to keep their job, to give sexual favors to scumbag managers who are using their position as an authority over these vulnerable immigrant undocumented workers. And Local 100 hasn't said a word. What's the matter? Guilty conscience?
Yeah.
Because you put him in that position, you bastards. You put him in that position, and you put our cleaners in the position where there's less of them for long periods of time in both stations and car equipment because you agreed to these pilot programs. Isn't it amazing? We never have a pilot program that helps working class people, is there? No pilot program for hazard pay for us. No pilot program to allow us to be able to take time off of work easier. Nothing for the people you supposedly represent. But you can agree to a pilot program in the contract to help management basically pave the way for eliminating an entire class of union members in both departments, in car equipment and stations. Tom talked about, the conditions they face in terms of where they have to eat their lunch and how unhuman it is and what disrespect they're being treated with. Think about this. They use solvents and cleaning solvents to clean those trains and to clean the stations that would have never been allowed by union cleaners and never has been allowed by union cleaners. We have no idea what the hell they could be exposing themselves to. And if you're a conductor and a train operator and you say, well, what does that have to do with us? You're in the cabs that they just cleaned. You're breathing that in. What do you mean? What does it have to do with you? And see, this is the problem, is that they've got us so at each other's throats fighting over the crumbs that they say to you, just worry about you. Just worry about that contract raise. Just worry about us padding our pension and getting out of here. That sounds like a ship that's sinking, doesn't it? Go get yourself a life preserver and get the fuck out of here, because this ain't going to last very long. That's the attitude the union leadership has. They were openly discussing buyouts for people who are close to retirement. And I'm all for those members receiving buyouts. I'm for them being 20 and out. I'm for them not having to work so hard, but not to reduce the headcount of New York City transit workers. Again, malpractice. How can you be a union person and talk about how, you're about defending members and you would never do anything to harm members, but you're going to help management reduce the headcount of cleaners all throughout the system. You're going to help management reduce the headcount of all of us by pushing through a way of hiring freeze that's still in effect to this day. Yet they know that there's going to be more people riding the subway, but they're not going to hire anybody. So the union goes into negotiations with management and agrees to job cuts. I just found out recently there was originally only 5 cuts on the C. Now there's 8. So when Eric Logel agreed to that 8 job cut work program, he agreed to almost doubling the job cuts on that line and agreed that it was okay. Agreed that a service cut was okay, that it was okay for it to continue. And now he's out here getting all sanctimonious about how he's fighting for the riding public and how he's a social justice warrior now all of a sudden with 2 white guys beside him. He's fighting for social justice and against racism. So, when we're talking about the next election, we have to talk about it because it's coming real soon. We haven't decided what positions we will run for. We don't think that any union member should be about self-promotion and should be selecting for themselves. I need to have this position. I need members to validate me by giving me this high position of authority. We think that members should decide what union representatives should run for what office. But before we talk about who runs for what office, the membership should be in charge of what kind of opposition we need to see, what kind of opposition we need to build. What is the voice of that opposition going to be? What is it going to fight for? What are its demands? When you look around at the people who are running for office, and we've had meetings with pretty much every major slate that's running for office, all they have are catchphrases. All they have are "we're not Utano." All they have are weak sauce Obama bullshit phrase mongering about reunification. What the hell does that mean? Reunification with who? Reunification with who? Organization. Organization of what? Organization of who? Organization to do what? That doesn't tell us anything. And part of the reason why we haven't united with one of these groups to run on a united slate is that none of them so far has been willing to hold open democratic decision-making meetings where members actually are put in control of their own union, any new leadership that's built. And they won't put themselves under the discipline of the rank and file of this union. They just want the rank and file of this union to line up behind them and to follow them and to be dragged by them wherever they think the union should go. And that's not any kind of real change. And that's how we got here. We got here with Utano and Samuelson with Take Back Our Union. And Lee Ireland is different than a lot of these other candidates because he actually does have a lifelong commitment to democratic functioning in the union. He actually does fight against corruption and publicly does so and is committed and has sacrificed a whole lot to do so. But Lee Ireland is also responsible for Take Back Our Union because he did a lot of the work to cobble together one united opposition slate. And a lot of people say, well, we need all you guys to get together on one slate and have it be one-on-one versus Utano. And we're for one united opposition slate, but it must be a democratically member-controlled opposition slate. It must amplify the voices of members and not amplify the voices of individuals who think they'd be good in a certain position running the union and having all the power and carving it up amongst themselves behind closed doors, not in full view of the membership, like we have always done, and like our union desperately needs to do if it's going to survive. So it's not about any kind of personal disagreement with anybody, and it's not about not thinking that any of the potential candidates have talents and skills to offer and have played positive roles at times in the struggle of Local 100. The question is the wrong leadership at the wrong time in history of Local 100 could make Local 100 history. And we simply cannot allow that anymore. And so in the very near future, we're going to be putting out an open call to build a united, democratically functioning opposition. And that means organizing public meetings. It would have to be via Zoom, given the pandemic and given the fact that, it is not, the infection rates are still so high. It would have to be online meetings, and it would have to allow members to vote online through Zoom or however that might happen. But it would also have to verify that they are members of Local 100, and then secondary meetings to determine who should run for what position in what department or local wide. But in order for that to happen, in order for that to take root and gain momentum, we need the membership of Local 100 to be contacting those running for office and telling them that you want them to follow what they say are their principles, which is against corruption. How are you going to fight corruption when you get in power if when you're organizing to run for power, you use corrupt methods? You just handpick whoever you want. Oh, this is my friend. We were in school car together. We worked together on this, that, or the other thing. And I think this person would be the guy, the person to run RTO, the person to run whatever department. That's corruption. And that's exactly what the bosses do. And it's exactly what the bureaucrats do. And we are not going to accept that. But it's not about me accepting it or not accepting it. It's about you, the membership of Local 100. Are the stakes not high enough for your voices to be heard? Have we not suffered and sacrificed enough for your voices not to echo in the halls of power of this union? Are the stakes not high enough for you to demand of anybody running for leadership in Local 100 that you say your heart's in the right place? You say you have these great ideas, put them before the membership. Let the membership decide if they agree with you. How are they going to function when they're elected if they won't put their ideas before the membership now? So we look forward to putting out in detail in writing what we think is a next step for establishing that kind of united, democratically functioning opposition. But ultimately, if your voices are not heard, it ain't going to matter. It's not going to matter. Tom, would you like to speak?
No, I think I was just couldn't agree more that the solution to this problem is just unifying. It's a great idea, but it has to be based on something. And the answer to our problems is greater democratic operation. That's what's missing completely within the union, the way it operates currently and has the entire 18 years that I've been in this union. And without that, there won't be any significant change. It'll just be the same old, same old. People are not willing to put it into writing and commit to any kind of principles. That one can only draw the conclusion that they don't want to be held to something. They'll be allowed to slip and slide if they do get elected. So I never said that. I didn't. Without that, nobody should expect anything different than what they've already got or had the entire time they've been here.
Yeah. And then, I mean, the other thing though, too, is that like we need to develop principles that govern the opposition. One of them should be no collaborators with the bosses who got us killed. If you were with Utano for decades, stay with him. Go down with the ship because you richly deserve to. Okay. If you have been on union release time for decades and were silent about safety and you were the chief safety officer of the union, sorry. Can't believe your promises now.
Right.
Doesn't work that way. The other thing is that anybody who will not take a pledge that they will implement the will of the membership and take a pledge to remove other officers who choose not to, who choose to defy the democratic voice of our membership. If you won't pledge to that ahead of time, I don't think that's too much to ask. Is it too much to ask for you to have any integrity at all? Is it too much to ask for you not to be completely and totally about yourselves and put the membership first a membership that died by the hundreds and was infected by the tens of thousands. After COVID, look, our standards got to be a lot higher. I'm sorry. And our problem is not that our standards are too high. It's not that the members always complain, like you'll hear from the union bureaucrats, the bureaucrats song, oh, they always complain, but they don't come to the meetings. Oh, they're always in trouble. And I don't want to hear that from a new generation of wannabe bureaucrats when they get in power, that, hearing the membership's voice and being held accountable to their will is not something they're interested in. Because if it's not something you're interested in, then we're not interested in your promises, because they're hollow and they don't mean anything. But in any case, I want to try to keep this short because we got another fight coming up on Tuesday. Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. is going to be the hearing in court where the judge will rule on Local 100's request for a temporary restraining order. If the temporary restraining order is approved by the judge, it will also affect the C line. The reason why it just affected the F line is because those cuts were going to go into effect on Sunday. So they had to make immediate action to keep the status quo. But if the judge rules, as I believe he will, in favor of Local 100 and grant them a temporary restraining order, then the F line service cuts will be off indefinitely. And then there'll be another hearing where he'll rule on the merits of the case. And if he gives them a temporary restraining order, it's very likely he will rule against the MTA. And if he does, that puts us in the position to then fight for platform controllers who are facing exactly the same illegal kind of job cuts. It puts us in a better position. It puts the union in a better position to negotiate over the next pick. And it puts them in a terrible position to try to defy the judge's order a second time in implementing service cuts. So it's a very important hearing, and as many members as possible need to join that hearing. There was only about a little more than a dozen people on the last live video hearing. I know a lot of us work, but we need to get more members on that call. So I'll send out the link as soon as I have it, and we'll be letting you know about future legal advocacy we need to do related to platform controls, also related to the air quality in the subways. But we need to hear from the membership. I got no problem putting up money to help members pursue their legal rights if their union won't fight back, but members got to step up and got to say that's something that you want and that's something that you need. And if we do that, we put ourselves in a position to put pressure on both management and the union. And there was something said by Jason Lewis on one of our live streams that I think it bears repeating. We want to know, what are you going to do to bend management to our will? What are we going to do to break them? What are we going to do to bring the war to their doorhouse? And who is serious about that? It's not just about people who may run for office or people who are elected officers like myself. It's about you as a membership. What are you willing to do to bring the war to their doorstep and to bend them to our will? And we need to have answers to that question, and we'll see very soon what members are willing to do. But in any case, you all know how to reach us. Local 100 Fight Back on Facebook. You can email me, john012871@gmail.com, or call or text me at 917-678-0557. And you can also email Local 100 Fightback at local100fightback@gmail.com. We look forward to talking with you real soon and continuing the discussion. Tom, go ahead.
One last thing. Did you want to mention the one for next Saturday regarding the COVID vaccine? Advertise for that one?
Yeah,
Because that's kind of an important one that we've been working on for a while.
yeah, actually, I'm glad you reminded me of that. On Saturday at 8 p.m., we're going to be holding a Facebook live stream event talking about the science behind the COVID-19 vaccine. There's a lot of conspiracy theories and speculation online that often muddies the water about what the real science is. And so we're going to be joined by a medical professional who has been on the front lines of COVID and can give us some of the science behind the vaccine and its development. We're also going to talk about what's behind a lot of the suspicion of the vaccine, a lot of the reticence to take the vaccine. And a lot of that has to do with a history, a long-term verifiable history of medical and scientific racism in this country, in terms of drug development, in terms of research, in terms of a lot of things. And there's a very real reason why people are suspicious of the medical community and of the ruling class in general when everybody's saying unanimously that this is good for you. And we need to take that seriously. And the person who will be giving the medical background is actually a person of color in the medical field, who has a lot of experience with tackling these questions. And we look forward to a wide debate and discussion about that, because no, I don't, just because somebody has a medical background, it doesn't mean that they know everything, and that the people watching just need to accept whatever they say. We want to have the widest possible discussion about this and take it seriously, because it's a real serious life and death issue. And we have to clear the air about the history, because those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. So it's very important that people join us. We'll be putting out the advertisement shortly, and we look forward to talking with you about that. So we'll talk real soon, and I hope everybody is safe, and we'll hopefully be seeing you on Tuesday at the court hearing. And beyond that, we'll be talking to you real soon as we know the results of that. Have a great night, everyone. Be safe. Tom, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, John. Good night.
Have a good night.